The former secretary was responsible for setting the standards for preserving agency records. And knowing this, it does raise the question, if the secretary was doing what she was supposed to do under the law, why would the State Department have to ask her for her emails back?
Republican Congressman Trey Gowdy, chair of the House Committee on Benghazi, which this week subpoenaed all of Hillary Clinton's private emails related to Libya. And it's time now for our Sunday group. Syndicated columnist George Will, Neera Tanden, president of the liberal think tank, the Center for American Progress, Kimberly Strassel from the Wall Street Journal, and Fox News political analyst Juan Williams. Kim, you wrote a column in today's Wall Street Journal under the headline Hillary's email escapade. And I want to ask you about one line in that. This email caper is pure Clinton. Explain.
Look, I mean, Governor Huckabee was right. The Clintons play for keeps. They will do whatever they have to do. And so her decision to keep her email where it was purposeful. It was with an eye to the future. It was about retaining control. Look, I mean, has there been a political family that has played more cat and mouse games over the years with documents, I mean, you just ran through a list of some of them with Lanny Davis. And that was in her head as she went through that confirmation hearing to become Secretary of State. She knew that she was probably going to run for president again. She wanted control of these emails. And here's the other thing. She's a lawyer. Okay, and so you just heard Lanny Davis talk all about how she didn't break the law. The Federal Records Act is advisory. There are no penalties for breaking it, and she knew that she could probably do this and get away with it. It was classic Clinton.
We ask you for questions for the panel, and we got this on Facebook from Mark Dorsey, who writes, why does she, Clinton, think that the rules we live by don't apply to her? Why couldn't she use the government's email address? What didn't she want the public to see? Neera, you worked in the Clinton White House. You worked for Senator Clinton. How do you answer, Mark?
I would say that she doesn't see herself as above the law, and that's why, or different from everyone else, and that's why, you know, she was following rules like the previous secretaries of state had used. And now she's putting forward her email, which is going above and beyond. You know, I think it's fascinating how there's people who can read every view of Hillary. I was talking to Hillary back in 2009. She wasn't thinking she was ever going to run for president again back then. And I think that these presumptions of, you know, nefarious activities here and there are just that, presumptions. And now we'll know because she's putting forward her email.
But let me just ask you this preserved question, because this is, I think, what bugs people. The rules were pretty clear. Your emails should be preserved. Do you really think when they wrote preserved, I'm not talking about breaking the law, I'm talking about Nick Merrill, her spokesman, said living up to the spirit and the letter of the law. Do you think that that's in keeping with the spirit, that you don't turn these over while you're Secretary of State, you don't turn them over when you leave as Secretary of State, you don't turn them over till 2 years after you leave, and it's only after the State Department lawyers confront you?
Okay, that's also faster than any previous Secretary of State passed over the email. So obviously, she handed over emails. The previous Secretary of States didn't hand over their emails.
But that's not true. John Kerry uses the government email, so they're all contemporaneously
no, it is true,
preserved.
Because I was saying previous Secretaries of State, previous to Hillary,
well,
had
that's
never
just
turned it
because
over.
Condoleezza Rice didn't use a government email. She didn't use any email.
Right, so Colin Powell used an email. Other people used an email. They were private emails. So all I'm saying is now we'll be able to see she's turned over, she's taking the act of actually turning over the emails to the public. I think let's, you know, I know this is hard to imagine, but let's take a breath, see what are in those emails, and then decide.
Well, the emails she's chosen to give the State Department.
So just to be clear about this, if a cabinet secretary today was using private and public email, right? Any other cabinet secretary, they're making that decision when they use private and public email, right? So that's the decision they're making. There's no public record of their private email.
Which is exactly why the Obama administration said use your government
where
email.
appropriate,
because
and
these emails belong to the public.
Exactly.
They don't belong to them.
And she's turning them over. So that's what we'll see.
The ones she chose to turn over.
Again, like any other cabinet secretary using private and public email.
Because I want to ask you the question that folks keep asking me. How big a deal is this? And given the fact that we're in March of 2015, how big a deal is this when we're talking about an election that isn't until November of 2016?
It's big because it is axiomatic that the worst political scandals are those that reinforce a pre-existing negative perception, which Kim has documented at length. The Clintons come trailing clouds of entitlement and concealment and legalistic Jesuitical reasonings, the kind of people who could find a loophole in a stop sign. Her obvious motive was to conceal. You conceal in order to control, and that's what makes this literally, strictly speaking, Orwellian. In George Orwell's novel 1984, Oceania's regime, the totalitarian regime, had an axiom. He who controls the past controls the future, and he who controls the present controls the past. This is a way of controlling what we will know about the history of our country, and it is deeply sinister.
God, Orwell, sinister. I mean, why don't we actually, instead of attacking and deriding, see what's in the email and then make judgment?
Why do you think she did this?
But don't you agree that there's a problem when the emails that we're going to see, there's 55,000 pages, are only what she and her lawyers decided to turn over.
They're the public emails. She has emails about, I'm sure, the bridesmaids' dresses. Do we have a right to see those emails? She has emails from friends like me that say,
but I'm saying to you that she sat there and vetted. What if there's an email that about Benghazi? And she just decided.
And that's where the lawyers will see those, exactly.
No, not if she didn't turn them over.
The State Department is going to see those emails, and any email on Benghazi to a public email, other people have documentation.
So you're saying the State Department's going to see her server?
No, I'm saying the State Department is going to see these emails.
What do you think about the idea of allowing an independent person to go in, that you heard Lanny Davis talk about, to see her server?
So I would just see what the emails we have are and make decisions on that later. We have 2 years before a presidential cycle. Why don't we actually get these emails out in the public and see if we will have more public emails. We'll have more emails public than any Secretary of State in the history,
just
obviously, because they're
none that actually matter.
No, not possibly none that actually matter.
Well, I must say, first of all, Hillary Clinton seems to me to be very entitled and privileged, and she broke the rules. I don't think there's any question as to whether or not she broke the law. That's not clear.
I agree.
But I will say this, that in terms of the politics of 2016, which is really what I think we're driving at here, is that Hillary Clinton scares Republicans to death. And I think that's what we've seen. Initially, Democrats, including the Obama White House this week, did not defend Hillary Clinton because the Obama White House wanted to make it clear they had set a clear rules of the road for Hillary Clinton, and they backed off. There was radio silence. I was over there this week. Radio silence on this. But by the end of the week, with all of this talk of subpoenas on Benghazi, and then all of the stuff about, doesn't this remind you of how technical and Orwellian the Clintons are? Suddenly, the Democrats, and we see this from here this morning, have become more defensive. And I think the idea is, you know what? Republicans are feasting. They are in a frenzy. They think this is Watergate redo, and it's not.
Okay. But you know, sometimes when you feast, it's Thanksgiving.
Yes, that's a fact, Jack.
All right.
Maybe particularly here.
We have to take a break, and we'll see you guys a little later.